Awesome. Drew, welcome to Power Hour Ventures, where we breed billionaires. Thank you for coming to the podcast today and talking with us a little bit about your history and your sport. Our guest is Drew Shore. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, thanks for having me on today. You got a great setup, and I'm happy to be part of it. I grew up in Denver, Colorado, moved away from home when I was 13. Youth hockey wasn't very good here when I was growing up. The growth has been incredible the last 20 years, so it's cool to see that, but there wasn't a lot of hockey when I was growing up. So moved to Vancouver, spent 2 years there, spent a couple years in Michigan, ended up coming back and playing college hockey here at the University of Denver, which was an awesome experience. Played professional hockey for 12 years all over the world, including a bunch of different spots in North America as well as Europe, Switzerland, and Russia. And then I retired in 2021, and I'm now back here living full time.
That's awesome. That's an amazing journey all over the world. Most people don't get to play all over the world. What was it like playing hockey on all the different continents?
Depends on the continent. Depends on the continent, depends on the year. But no, I had a great experience overall. My oldest daughter, who's now 5, Brooklyn, was born in Zurich, Switzerland. We had a couple great years there. I was fortunate enough to win a championship there, which was an awesome experience. Spent a couple years in Russia as well. Actually had good experiences there as well. It was tough. My last year there is when COVID kind of started, so that threw a little bit of a wrinkle into playoffs and different things. But overall, I had a great experience. Met a lot of great people. Got to see a lot of things I never thought I'd see in the world, and I'm happy to be back here.
Yeah. What was your favorite thing about traveling and competing across the globe?
I think the cool thing was, especially my first year when my wife and I were living there and we didn't have kids, everything is just so close. So we'd have 2-3 days off of practice living in Zurich, and you're able to fly to London, Monaco, all these cool places within 1 or 2 hours. So I think that was really cool. And then just seeing different cultures, seeing different parts of the world. And it definitely makes you appreciate too being able to live here in America and some of the things that we're able to have here. I think that sometimes it takes living somewhere else to kind of realize kind of how good it is here. So I think that was something I'm grateful for as well.
Yeah, I think with my travels as well around the world, I think that's the thing that I realized the most is how great we have it here in the U.S. and how blessed we have it. But you don't realize that till you travel. There are some amazing things around the world, and you do get to see some really cool things. So I actually enjoyed that along my journey as well, was being able to see all the different cultures, experience the food, experience all that stuff. So that's really cool.
Yeah, I mean, I think with all the media and stuff now, a lot of people focus on the negatives, right? And I think that every country has a lot of things they do well and has a lot of things they need to work on. And we're definitely no different here in America. But I think that, like I said, after seeing some of the places that I've lived, I'm definitely happy to be able to live here.
Yeah, that's awesome. And you started here in Colorado, your journey, and now youth hockey here in Colorado is actually pretty big. What is it like traveling? Because most people aren't familiar with in order to make it into the NHL, the travel that's required from youth sports, where traditional sports like basketball and baseball and football, you normally can stay at home and you have your traveling teams that you go a little bit, but hockey's completely different. So can you kind of explain what it's like in youth hockey to be able to make it to that next level?
Yeah, hockey's completely different. And now that I'm working as an agent, it's tough to kind of explain this to a lot of people because even people who know sports, hockey's just such a different thing. Like you said, normally if you play football or basketball, you play for your local high school, you do really good there, you go to a good college, from there you get drafted. But hockey's different because there's so many different paths that guys take. In Canada, there's semi-professional hockey for kids who are 16 to 20. So a lot of kids at a young age have to make a pretty big decision whether they want to play college hockey or not. You get paid a little bit in that league, so you're no longer eligible to play college hockey. So I mean, as a 15 or 16-year-old kid, a lot of kids have to make big decisions, and I think every path is different for every kid. I had a great experience going to college. Now with all the NIL stuff, maybe that'll change one day and they'll find a way to kind of make the best for both leagues. But as of right now, there's still not a solution for that. So like you said, it was just like if you were good at hockey when I was growing up, you had to go play somewhere else just because there weren't enough games, weren't enough teams. And now you have kids who, I'm actually coaching a team next year, but there's 4 or 5 kids from other states who are living here to play. So it's cool to see the success and just kind of development of hockey, and happy to play a super small role in that.
Yeah, well, and it's exciting. You played a pretty big role. I know you make it small, but being an agent now, playing in the league, playing all over the world, you've been able to experience things that most kids dream of. What is it like to be drafted in the NHL? Like that's a dream that kids haven't been able to play in the NHL. What is that like?
It was an awesome experience. I think that it's kind of surreal. I'm actually headed to Nashville on Sunday because that's where the draft is next week. And I just remember my draft was in Montreal. I was able to have like all of my parents, and I think I had a friend or two there as well. And you just kind of, it's full of anxiety as you're sitting there waiting for teams to call your name. And I just remember it's something that a lot of people say that take it in, but at the time as an 18-year-old kid, you're kind of just sitting there nervous the whole time. But you get selected by an organization, and then you kind of realize that that's just the start of the hard work. But I had a great time there, and I went a little later in the draft than I thought I was going to go, which was, as an 18-year-old, was a little bit hard to deal with that disappointment. But it was a good experience overall, and I'm happy my family could be there with me.
That's awesome. That's an amazing experience, and congratulations on that. That's a cool accomplishment that very few get to actually have. So that's a feat that's absolutely amazing.
Thanks.
With kids that are coming up in hockey now, what is some advice that you would give them, since you've been able to experience and see all the different levels, and since you're working as an agent now, what are some advice that you'd give to not just kids but parents as well for up and coming hockey players?
I think my answer to this might surprise you, but I think social media and just the internet's played such a big role in kind of the mental mindset of a lot of young athletes. Like when I was coming up, like maybe there'd be like a blog online that like once every couple times a year would update like who is going to college and stuff. But now kids at such a young age are able to see what all the other kids their age are doing. So as a result of this, they're always comparing themselves to like, well, this kid's playing juniors at this age and this kid talked to this college. And so I think that so many kids are focused kind of on where they are at compared to other kids their age. But I think the focus should be on just how are they going to get better that season, because a lot of times a kid who's the best at 14 or 15 isn't necessarily the best at 19 or 20. So I think the mindset for a lot of the kids and parents should just be focusing on kind of getting better, because I think if you're a good player who continuously gets better every year, in the long run, you're going to pass kind of everyone else. So I think that would kind of be my advice on that.
Yeah, and that's great advice, because with technology nowadays, it's hard not to compare yourself, and everybody gets up in that rat race where it's like, oh, I have to be here, but putting in that hard work continuously, continuing to make yourself better is a very important message that I also try to relay to kids as well. You stay focused on yourself and improving yourself, and that's what's going to ultimately get you to where you want to go. With hockey, is there one arena that you liked playing in the most?
I mean, growing up here, being able to, I played to play against the Avs. It wasn't necessarily like the arena I loved the most, but it was just such a cool experience because so many people who supported me over the years were able to attend the game. So that was definitely something that I look back fondly on.
That home ice.
Yeah, I think we lost a couple times I played here, but I mean, I was just so happy to be able to play in front of my family, friends, grandparents, and so that was.
That's really cool, being able to play in front of family. I didn't get to play in front of family much because of my sport. I was traveling all over the world, so they didn't get to see me much. They saw me a few times, but it was really, really special when family was there, being able to play and compete in front of them, especially when you're on the national stage. With sports going forward, where do you see hockey moving in the direction with the new NIL rules? Sorry about that.
Well, I'm hoping that they continue to do just a good job of growing the game. Hockey for a long time has been just a sport that the growth compared to other sports hasn't probably been where it needs to be. And it's a great game. So I think the more people can just try and get eyes on the game, and so for people to kind of realize how good of a sport it is. I mean, I think that a lot of people now in playoffs, you see people who aren't really hockey fans, but will tune into playoff hockey just because it is a great sport. And I'm obviously biased, but I love the sport, and it provided me with so many the opportunities I had in my life. So, I mean, I'm hoping that it continues to grow. As an agent, I'm hoping that there's more and more players who fall in love with the game at an early age and are successful. Yeah,
and I think hockey's the best sport to watch. It's my favorite sport to watch. The action and the pace of play is just very, very entertaining. So it's actually been a lot of fun watching the growth of it so far. And I think with the change with NIL, I think there could be some things that come up that make that help it continue growth and make it an even bigger sport than it already is, because it is a really big sport around the world. With traveling around the world and with competing in the NFL, we always come up with adversity in everything, in business and sports. Can you tell us an experience that you had faced with adversity that you had to overcome and how you overcame it?
I get asked this question a lot, and I like to be careful with it because I think that adversity, I don't like when a lot of athletes, because there's so many things that people go through in real life that is different than athletic adversity. But if we're just talking about athlete adversity, so many athletes go through it during different phases of their career, whether that's getting a major surgery and having to come back, whether that's getting cut from a team, traded for a team. And I had all those experiences. But I think the most adversity I faced is when I retired, just because I thought I was going to play hockey till I was 40 years old. Then you retire at 30 years old, and your whole, like, after your whole life has been spent doing something, you kind of have to find a way to reinvent yourself. You have to find a way to kind of figure out what your new passion is and kind of find a way to compete the way you're used to competing. So I think that in terms of athletic adversity, I think that when I retired, that was probably the toughest first year of adversity that I faced. And I feel like I'm slowly starting to get on the other side of it, but it's definitely been a long process.
Yeah, and that's an adversity that most people don't talk about, is that end. And actually, I think all athletes face that. And the longer you're in sports, the harder that adversity is. If your last game is a high school game and that's the last, you are sad that you're finishing up your sports career. If it's college, you've played it longer, so you have more attachment. If you make it as long as you did, that becomes part of your identity and being able to take that next step. So I know that you've been working on some stuff and you've been educating people with helping transition to that next step, because that's one difficult area that most people don't talk about a lot, is how do we transition athletes to that next stage. What are some things that you've done that you're finding that have helped you with that transition? I know you're going through it right now, but what are some things that have helped you?
I spend a lot of time talking to guys about this because, like you said, it doesn't get talked about enough. And I thought my transition was tough because I didn't have the success at the NHL level that I thought I would have. But then you talk to guys who played for 25 years, won multiple Stanley Cups, won gold medals, who have a harder time transitioning than other guys. So like you said, I think that it's a different transition for all athletes depending on when you stopped, but it's tough for everybody. Yep. And I think that the thing I've noticed among successful people now is athletes who are able to retire and then find something else that they're passionate about seem to make that transition quicker. So I think it's my advice to young athletes or athletes who are retiring would just be find something else that you're passionate about, whether that's finance, real estate, podcasting, working, coaching, you know what I mean? Find something. And then also for me, just kind of keeping a pretty strict daily routine has helped a lot, just because as an athlete, you're so used to kind of waking up, working out, getting a sweat in, and then that kind of sets the tone for the rest of your day. So, I mean, those are kind of some things that I've noticed or trends that I've noticed that have helped guys.
Yeah, no, and that's things that I've noticed as well, is setting that pattern right in the morning where you get up and you're doing the right things to set the day right is very, very important. And it's interesting because sports is one area where you don't know when your career can end. You have all these other areas in business and stuff like that where you go to school, you study, and then you go work in those fields, and you can decide to retire, you can decide to choose. But sports is the one industry where you can get injured on the field or off the field just like that, and your career's over. So it's something that's harsh that can be pulled away from athletes when they're not quite ready for it. And that's another part that's very difficult for that transition is you thought you had 10 more years in it, you thought you had 5 more years, and you broke your ankle walking down the street on something, or it was in a game, and you have to all of a sudden pivot your mindset that you've been focused on. And that's the reason that you've been successful, is because you're able to stay focused and stay alert and stay training at that highest level. So it's interesting to see that how athletes have to do that. But it's good that you're talking about it. I know you've talked about it a lot with a lot of people. I think more athletes need to be vocal about it, so that way it can help other athletes and know that they're not alone in this transition, and there are different ways and different things to do to help you succeed in those next journeys.
Yeah, I mean, I think people don't like talking about things that are tough, right? And athletes are supposed to have the stereotype of kind of having everything figured out. But like you said, I think the transition's tough for everybody, regardless of kind of how long you played or what level of success you had. So I'm happy that more and more people are talking about it. And like I said, I've done a lot of things to try and focus on athletes who are now retired, who have done well in different business ventures and stuff like that. So I'm always rooting for the athletes. So it's been fun to see guys have a lot of success off the field or whatever sport they played.
Yeah, and I know you've been transitioning and you got some really cool stuff that you're working on right now. Can you tell us a little bit about all the stuff that you have going on?
Yeah, I got a lot of things going on right now. My primary responsibility is an agent. I represent hockey players for a great company out of LA called Wasserman, who's been involved in a ton of different sports. The hockey side is pretty new over the last probably 5 or 6 years. So that's been awesome because there's so many things when I look back in my career I wish I would have done differently. So if I can kind of make a small change in a young player's career, whether that be through giving them advice, having them do things differently than I did, I take a lot of pride in that, and hopefully I'm going to be able to help a lot of young players do things differently than I did.
That's good, and passing along that knowledge and information is extremely valuable. So being able to help that next generation, because that's what I like to do, is I like to give back to sports, and it's like, how do we help educate them so they can make their decisions? Because my decisions aren't necessarily right for the next people, and I know I made a lot of mistakes along my journey, but being able to pass that information along is great, and you're literally taken the direct step as an agent, being able to make a big impact, which is very, very cool that you're doing that.
Yeah, and then I actually have 3 younger brothers who all played hockey at various levels. 2 are still playing, but I mean, I think that kind of through them as well, because I kind of lived through their careers as well. So I saw them do a lot of things well and a lot of things that they probably should have done differently. So kind of just pulling all those things together and all those resources. I think for me, the cool thing was I would have loved to have signed a 7-8 year contract somewhere, but I was never fortunate enough to do that. So as a result of that, I was always in a new locker room every year with new guys, with new teammates. So I was able to kind of see how different organizations were run, how different guys handled things. So I have a lot of experience, and as much as the moving around sucked while I was playing, I'm trying to use that to kind of benefit me in my next career.
Yeah, and I think that's a huge asset, because being able to see how all the organizations were ran, that's something that you have now as that other athletes that would transition that stayed with one organization don't necessarily have. So I think that actually did set you up for being very successful in this next career, which is really exciting, because I know you're going to do well in this, and I'm really excited to see you move forward with it.
Thanks.
One last question that I got for you. I know you're into golf.
Yeah.
You have any 3 players you could play with a foursome. Who are they, and where would you play?
Ooh. Well, I'd have to go with Michael Jordan.
Okay.
Steph Curry. And then I'd probably bring one of my brothers around just so I could, so they could witness that, and I could hopefully wax one of them.
All right.
And where I would play, ooh, that'd be tough. There's so many great courses out there that I haven't played. I've been able to play a lot of good ones, but I would probably have to go to one of those discovery properties somewhere that are super nice, but also laid back. So there's not a lot of rules there, so you're able to have a lot of fun at the same time while playing good golf. So
yeah,
that would probably be my foursome. I'm down a little bit of money to my brothers this summer, so I got some work to do. Hopefully get some back here soon.
You got to pick it up soon. Yeah, we'll have to get out on the golf course and play soon. One other thing that I did want to bring up, I know you've been also doing a podcast yourself, which is starting to grow, and you've been having some great guests on your show. Tell us a little bit about that podcast.
Well, I was super fortunate. I was able to have you as my first guest, who you can clearly tell has had a lot of speaking experience, because you were able to carry the conversation when I was brand new at it. But yeah, podcasting has been awesome. I was just telling someone that I think it's brought so many other positive things into my life that I didn't necessarily think about when I started the podcast, whether that's just connections, friendships, new ideas. So yeah, I started my podcast. I just did my 17th episode. Betting the Limit, it's called. It's on Spotify and stuff like that, and it actually focuses on athletes who are retired and now succeeding in different business ventures. So it's also super fun just to have conversations and kind of hear what people are into. And like I said, it's something that's constantly growing, and I'm working on it, and is making me a better kind of thinker, speaker, and it's been fun.
What have you learned the most in doing all your interviews from your guests? What's one thing that you've picked up?
I think a lot of people who are super successful have this mindset where even when they fail at something, they don't view it as a failure. They view it as a learning experience. And I think that that was a huge help for me, because for a while, especially my first year as retirement, I viewed my career so much as a failure because it was something that I didn't have the career that I wanted to have. So I think listening to them kind of say like, hey, like take a step back. You were able to accomplish a lot of things that you never thought you would, but then use those experiences to try and be uber successful in whatever you do next. So I think that that's something that a common trend I've noticed a lot about successful people is they're always either kind of winning at what they're doing or they're learning from their failures. So I think just kind of taking that mindset in has kind of helped me a lot.
That's awesome. Yeah, and that mindset is very, very important on focusing forward and continuing on succeeding. So that's really cool advice that you got. Thank you for coming on the show today. And go check out his new podcast. It's actually not new. Go check out Betting the Limit. He's on episode 17. It's really good. He has a lot of great guests. So thanks for coming on ours today, and we appreciate the conversation.
Well, good luck with yours. I know you're going to do great, and thanks, bro.
Thank you.